It's always fun treat for me to see everyone dancing to the countdown music and the little boxes at the bottom. Welcome to Inside the Rookery Season 3, Episode 3. We are here today talking with Pete Lattimore from Garblag Games about streaming your RPGs. So welcome to the stream, Pete. I will pass over to you for a brief introduction. You can say whatever you like, as long as it's about 30 seconds long.
Oh dear, that's not going to happen. Hello, I'm Pete from Garblag Games. Thank you guys for having me on. It's very kind of you to put up with me for an hour. Yeah, I'm from Garblag Games. I started it off a few years ago. We used to film and release on YouTube, and then when COVID hit, we kind of moved to streaming. We'd done a few bits before, but we went fully streaming then. And, we've been churning out videos 4 days a week for the last 2 years. And I've kickstarted a role-playing game called Dodeca RPG, which is based on D12s, so the best dice. And lots of stuff going on. Your viewers probably know us from our Warhammer Fantasy roleplay streams, from Flint and Steel and other such things. So,
You'll note there that I use the Andy Law wrangling technique, which is where I tell him he has 30 seconds, but I don't mind if he takes up to 5 minutes.
Well, it'll all come out in the wash anyway, won't it? So.
Yeah, totally fine. You are our guest. We are here to talk to you, so you can absolutely talk for as long as you like.
You're right. D12s are the best dice. Sorry.
Okay, so we have got, as always, questions pre-submitted on Discord from our community, patrons and Discord server visitors alike, and I will bring those up. But as always, pop your chat in the comments. If it's good chat, it gets brought up on screen. If it's a good question, even more likely to. So keep those comments coming, and we will get straight into it. Okay, so we're going to go right into the first question from Creative Fossey, which is, how do you set up... Sorry, I can't see that. It's delayed for me. How do you set up the stream, and what software do you use?
Oh, cool. So, personally, I use OBS, which is Open Broadcasting Software. That's literally what OBS stands for, which is great. It's free. It's easy to use. It's a little bit technical sometimes when you start digging down into it. And I will use Zoom for video and audio. We tried Discord, but we found that it wasn't quite stable enough. Mm-hmm. And stability is a massive thing for streaming. You want to make sure what you're doing is stable so you have a good stream all the way through. What else do we use? We produce our overlays. I use Inkscape. Some people use Photoshop or Illustrator. That's pretty much what software we use.
I'm pretty much intending to do largely the same because we're busy going through the process of setting up the streams. It's going to be quite different to, say, for example, these streams where we can just use the super easy, barely an inconvenience piece of software that is StreamYard, and it works wonderfully. It means that if, for example, we have downtime on our internet connection, it still runs because it's all worked in the browser rather than on an individual PC, which is obviously going to be quite different when we go to streaming live, going live.
Absolutely. And there's a trade-off when you have browser-based streaming versus on your own machine. It's a little less flexibility, but as you said, there's kind of easy to use tools that you can just get in there and go for it. Which is why I recommended you guys use StreamYard, because for this kind of interview format especially, it's perfect. You can bring people in and out, do these kind of easy transitions without having to find the right button and all those kinds of things. But there are ways around those fiddly bits with OBS, which we can talk. I can show you. One of the cool toys that I have is my little Stream Deck, which is very handy. And I can program lots of functions in OBS to the buttons. For example, on our Wrath and Glory game, which I think has now become Once Upon a Time in the Old World, I've got a button that says ready, go. and that turns off the cover, cancels the music, turns on the desktop audio, does all of that with one press of a button. So there are ways around it, but they cost you money. So it's been a progression.
Buying one of those.
They are so handy.
StreamYard has been good for this because you can it's like plug and play. You just come in, it's all there. But
Absolutely.
without a producer, with me, like I am pressing a lot of buttons in the countdown time. But yeah, so just having to press one button sounds very attractive.
Yeah, but those things are sort of like £100. That'll set you
Worth
back.
it.
I got it on an Amazon deal day. So I said, I was looking at Amazon. I said, those things are on a deal. And my wife just turned around to me and went, just buy it. I was like,
It is
had enough of me going on about it. I want one of these things. Yeah, so.
So the next one is from Oka, a good follow-on. What mic tips do you have for an around-the-table live stream?
Ooh, mics, interesting. So when you start out, if you're starting a stream, the most important thing to worry about is the audio. The audio is the thing that we've had the most criticism or commentary about in our early days, and still to this day. Because if you have people on different levels, then that throws listeners off who are sitting there with their headphones on. And if you have interferences with your microphones, then you can cause problems. We did a filming episode a long time ago, first season of Flint and Steel, and one of the team, they will remain nameless, but they know who they are, put their phone next to the microphone, and only in editing did I realise that there was a beep 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 caught in the audio every time they got a Facebook update. So it was interesting things like that. So keep the table clear of electronic devices. Hang your microphones if you can from the ceiling, because banging on a table when you're excited and you've rolled a critical hit will come up on your microphone or knock your microphone over. Be careful with your dice. Do not sit there grinding dice. That kind of thing, if it goes on too long. A little bit for excitement, get the feel of the roll on the table, because that's the whole thing about around the table experience. You've got the face-to-face, you've got the dice, you've got the minis, you've got all that stuff. That's great, and Flint and Steel was good for that.
I'm presuming Pringles from Millie the GM means don't eat crisps.
Yeah, I think so. Or use a Pringles can, I'm not sure.
I don't know whether that'd be a problem.
We have had some people who kind of forget that big bags of crisps might be a bit distracting in the middle of a stream, or kind of opening too much fizzy things. It's okay when you're recording, because often those people, if they're wise to the table and you've laid the kind of ground rules at the beginning, they'll either open all of that beforehand, or they'll do it and let everyone stop. One of the key things for around the table, if you're recording, is to give pauses. You have to have breaks for editing. The beginning of a recording, you need to record 5 seconds at least of silence to pick up the background audio. And you'll need to tune your microphones when you do a live stream to balance that out, because in those pauses you'll hear kind of that background noise. So there's loads of little things that we've picked up over the years. Around the table live stream we've done a few times. So we did a Mothership one-shot Halloween special that was about 4 hours long with a giveaway in the middle. And that was live stream, and people were very excited. It was quite hot in the garage, which was my studio, I should say. Sorry, my converted garage. So it started off recording in a pub. Never do that. But I was so eager to get going. Yeah, I watched Critical Role, episode 5 of the first campaign, the 5th one they aired, and I thought I could do that. So I got some friends together. We said, yeah, we're going to record it. And we ran a role-playing club in St Albans, a town where I live, every Monday night. Still going. Unfortunately, I don't have the time to go anymore. But it's been going for about 20 years. And in the corner of the pub, I would bring all my filming gear, cameras and microphone and stuff on the table and all this kind of stuff, and we did pub play, and it was a great game. The audio was terrible, and people let us know. So then my quest was to get good audio, and then after that, good video, and improve the visuals, because sound is more important. Because even if your video goes wrong, you've got a podcast. Yeah, so you've got a backup. You know.
Just a big shout out to anyone like me who learned Latin at school from Ecce Romani, word association, St Albans, ver alamium. It all just like it arrives. Yeah. I can't stop it.
the old Roman town and the wall and the hypercourse and all that stuff.
Can I just ask a little follow up on that? Like, do you, in terms of the amount that people are kind of listening / streaming to kind of what you're doing, like how many of them, what ratio of them do you think do only really listen to the audio, like do almost treat it like a podcast?
Well, there are a lot of people. So we stream on Twitch, we then upload to YouTube, and we have a podcast which Millie, the GM, who's one of our other awesome producers along with Matt and Ben, turn into a podcast, and we have a lot of people who just listen to that, and they give us a lot of feedback because all they have is the audio, you know, and that's do you want podcast stats? There you go, Millie's in there. She loves shit. I'm like, yeah, give me stats. I work in data in the real world, so I'm like, yeah, stats, give it to me. So it's mostly on YouTube. So most people consume it on YouTube, whether that's listening to it in the background or watching it. You know, probably about a third the number of people watch us on Twitch over the course of it being on Twitch, not live. That's a smaller number. But podcast numbers are high, and they're catching up. So it's the more we put on there, the more people are finding us. Our alien shows have done really well on there because they're a bit more atmospheric, and there were less physical components or VTTs, that kind of stuff. So it was more just about the player experience. It's you've really got to think about what game you're trying to create and how you want to get that across, whether you want to have music in the background, how are you going to get that into your stream, all this kind of stuff. It's there's a whole broad spectrum of stuff. Sorry.
I just need to say that when I gave a shout out to my fellow Ecce Romani learners, I didn't actually expect one of them to A, be on the stream, and B, be able to, as can I, quote the first chapter of Ecce Romani. Cornelia est puella Romana. Random. So, discipline at the table, Seco777. I don't know why I gave you your 777 this time. Never done it before. How do you manage your group and keep them on track for the recording?
Yeah. So, when we began, we managed it through a Facebook group, and we'd put in there, right, we're going to do this game. Who wants to play? We'd have a discussion about the players, and then I would post the rules. And we had like and I think it's more important for understanding when you're face to face, because you get lots of crosstalk and you can't mute someone in the room, you know, unless you've got really cool bits of kit like this, you know, where you've got your soundboard and you can dial people up and down, but you need someone in the corner of the room doing that, not the DM going, which is like, it was a one-man band to begin with, so it was kind of fiddly. So there were rules, and it was sort of like, don't mess with your dice too much, don't eat loud food, if you have a cough, don't come, sorry. You know, and also things about, you know, it's a shared thing, let other people have the spotlight, just some general role playing, good behavior around the table kind of rules. And we had, because we were filming rather than streaming, we had a signal, crossed arms basically was like, we need to stop, or we need to cut that bit. Someone said something that we don't want to be on the stream, on the video, that kind of thing. But most people were quite good. The hardest thing to enforce was 5 seconds of silence. And I'd go, okay, and I'd start recording. I'd go, okay, we're now recording 5 seconds of silence. And I'd sit there and someone would go, or like they'd be eyeballing each other over the table to like make them, and I'm like, I just need to record 5 seconds of silence. Can we just please do 5 seconds of silence? Just shut up. So everyone, a lot of time people are just like sitting there, like covering their eyes to not wind each other up. So yeah, we got there in the end. And after a while, we'd make sure that people turned up like 20, 30 minutes early so we can chat. Because also it was a social thing, you know, and you don't want to lose that social part of role playing. So we'd turn up, we'd chat, we'd get all the crap out of the way, and then we'd go, right, are we all good? Are we all in the right place? Okay, right, we're going to start recording. So that was the case. With streaming, it is the green room at the beginning, you know, and while the stream has started and the music's playing and we're in the background all getting our stuff out, then we go into the stream, and most of the team now are very experienced. They're good at it, and they know when it's time to, you know, sit back. They're not in the room with everybody else, so they can sit back and let the other people have their moment, and not too interrupting, but just enough. It's difficult. That's been the real difference. Discipline at the table when you're talking in the real world versus streaming. It's a slightly different problem to tackle.
It's something we've been discussing quite a lot behind the scenes as we're preparing, obviously doing a stream for ourselves, and trying to ensure that not just that everyone has a moment to shine, but also that people don't take too long. Because as we noted with some of our earlier test games in the background, some of us have some really cool things to say. I'm not saying I speak for a long time, but some of us speak for a long time. And that also diminishes the potential impact that others can have on the stream. So ensuring that there's enough space and slotted space for everyone to have their moment, as you said.
Yeah, and you've got to be careful. It's like a fine balance. And I think it works in role-playing in general, but you're not showing it to other people, and that's the difference. You know, you want to, as a GM or a DM or a storyteller or whatever you want to call it, you want to have a good balance, but maybe not in each session, because sometimes it's the fighting bit and the fighter needs to go, or sometimes it's the mystery bit and the investigator needs to go. But over the course of it, whereas when you stream, you want that stream to be like a little encapsulation of what's going on.
Yeah.
And it's a different kind of balance. But I don't try and force it and say, right, this is your episode, everyone else shut up, or you're talking too much, shut up, you know, that kind of thing. It's I think the guys have got a good feel for it, and they're a good team, so they do a good job. And also, what you need, hang on, bear with me a second.
It's the action segment of the stream.
You need a warhammer.
Oh yeah,
to whack them over the head with when they get out of order, and that was what I used to do.
Quite right too.
I've got a Mjolnir up there if we need one. Yeah.
Rango has her sitting under the tree. Flavia is singing. I'm overjoyed. There's more of us. Anyway, the right cast for the right game, says Aaron. And as Azumath said, the main challenge we found with our group is making sure people don't get excited and talk over one another. Causes real problems with conferencing software. Yeah.
Crosstalk is a big thing when you start. Yeah. And you have to. And you're in a weird space where you're playing with your friends and you're streaming it. You don't want to tell them off. They're spending their time to help you with your stream, and you're like, "Can you stop doing that?" But you don't want to say it like that, you know. So it's how you tackle these problems. Discipline at the table is probably a bit of a harsh way to put it, but a mutual understanding. You know, we're all here together. We're streaming, so it's not the usual game. In the early days, we used to have in the studio, and that's one of the challenges about the studio, and you'll face this when you guys come to stream, is that, you know, the games master's talking to, you know, one side of the table, and the other side having a very quiet chat that they think's very quiet, but they're very close to the microphone, and you're like, I'm trying to wave my hand off screen to like indicate move away from the microphone, because you don't want to stop that necessarily, because they're having those and you know, you need those little conflabs to figure out what's going on in the story sometimes. But you know, in a remote stream that's much easier. And in fact, we found a really good technique in Alien games. I would just get everyone I wasn't talking to take their headphones off, and then the audience can hear what's going on, the player involved can hear what's going on, but everyone else was like, all the other players are like, what's going on? What's going on? And then we'd be like, you can put them back on now. They put them on, and I'd say, right, roll initiative, and they're like, whoa, you know. So it's yeah. Sorry, anyway, I'm rambling now. So yeah.
No, not at all. You're not rambling at all. Andy, do you have a follow-up question?
Yeah, I do. It sort of also links back to what you were saying before in terms of mics. But have you ever considered, in terms of like live play, having individual mics rather than a kind of a group one? Or
so in my studio we had 5 microphones.
Yeah.
So I've got one here. So to begin with, my very first stream, just to see if I could make the streaming work, I got mobile phones, because I've actually got not bad cameras, and set up a IP what's that? I can't remember what the word is. IP clone type thing app you can install that then you can get the camera to hook up to. So it basically all worked together. It was rubbish quality, but it streamed, and I was like, right, okay, I'm now going to go to the next step. So I got like these little USB toner microphones, which are perfectly serviceable. Probably better if you're like chatting with family or recording something you want to listen to back later, but it's not for general consumption. So they were okay, but this was the microphone that had the phone next to it, and you know, caused the challenge. Then what we moved up to is we had 5 of these. So these are condenser microphones, and they all connected into, and you don't have to do this, I went a little bit over the top. At first, all of these connected into that. So I had 5 microphones going into the mic port of my laptop. This is, I've learned the lessons, you know. And then I got my Behringer soundboard, which is really cool, really handy, and 5 of these, and we would have 2 on each side of our table, 1 for the Game Master specifically. And you need to make sure, and the sound, because I was the Games Master most of the time, the sound's sort of like I'm just leaning towards my own quality, but you need to make sure the Games Master, whoever's running the game, has got the best sound, because they will talk more than everybody else. Just you know, by that thing. So yeah, we had, I've seen streams where people have 1 microphone in the center of the table, and that's great, but the challenge is everyone will be at such a distance that you need to put the gain up very high on your microphone so that its field of sound collection is bigger, and what that means is you'll pick up other stuff, and you'll have that feeling of they're in a room and not they're each talking to me, which is what you're trying to create, you know, that intimate sound.
I mean, I suppose that gives you greater control if you have individual players who happen to be a lot louder than others.
Yes. On certain games, one side of the table was always dialed down a little bit. I'm not going to say who that was.
Me too.
But yeah.
And do you, I'm just thinking about the practical thing you were saying there about the side conversations. Like, do the players have the capacity to mute the microphone that's closest to them?
No.
Or do you think
so that was where the challenge came in.
Yeah.
So also, because of the setup of my garage, the soundboard was I couldn't have that right next to me, and all of my games mastering stuff, and the board for miniatures and all that kind of thing. So that was in the corner of the garage, but all the wires were going across the ceiling. It was all out of view. Little microphones, just, you know, I've now got this Blue Yeti, but they were all just out of shot. Cameras crossing over. I had look at that! I've messed up my mic by playing around with it. We had a wedge-shaped table, so that when the Games Master, because we had 3 boxes, one side of the table, other side of the table, Games Master, Critical Role. You know, this was my inspiration.
Thanks, Critical Role.
And because of that, we had cameras crossing over that way and one looking at the Games Master, and then microphones hanging down, lights, lots of lights. You know, because your camera is only as good as the light that you use in the room. You know, if you don't have a lot of light, it's just going to look terrible. So I mean, there's a question on screen now: how much does it cost to start? Both the cheapest and maybe the more expensive.
Yeah.
So that kind of all feeds in. So you think about all that stuff you're trying to put together, you know, the first place to go is audio, you know. These are like 12 quid, but they're not great. These are 30 quid, and they're better. And to be honest, most of Flint and Steel is, in fact, I think all of Flint and Steel is recorded with these, and it sounds really good. You know, I'm really pleased with that as a product and what we created. I think that worked, you know, and they can tell the difference on the days when I'd unplugged my laptop, done something else with it, plugged it back in, and not redone the sound settings.
Yeah.
Always check your sound settings every time. So 30 odd quid, you know, a go, and then my current microphone is like £200. So and I haven't got my soundproofing and stuff all set up in here yet, but it sounds, you know, pretty good. You can play with the gain. They're a lot more responsive. You can tune them. You can set them up so they can do a whole field around them, or just what's in front of them and things like that. So if you do want to start with one of those in the middle of a table, I would hang it from the ceiling above the table, put it on the wide setting, turn the gain up, and not allow anyone to touch their dice until they're rolling. You want the sound. The whole point of the table, around the table experience, is you want the sound of the dice. You want to know when they're rolling and get that feel. We're at the table, but you don't want someone sitting there, you know, and sometimes you have to say your tabletop habit. Some people make dice towers. Some people play with a pencil. You grind dice between your hands. You know, just, you know, and you've got to find a way to do that without sort of hurting someone's feelings or stuff, because we're all just friends playing in the garage. You know, sometimes it was 38 degrees in there, and you're like, stop.
Holy no!
So air conditioning, then that's another top tip, is it?
We've got an air conditioner, but the problem is that has sound.
Yeah.
So one of our second highest viewed video with 13,000 views is a Mothership one shot we did when it first came out. I was waiting for the Alien role playing game to come out, and someone said, "Have you checked out Mothership?" I said, "No." So I picked it up. I was like, "Cool, okay, we're going to run a one shot." Ran a one shot. Boom. Not many people had done it. Got a lot of hits. The sound, not great. I'm not going to lie, because it was the hottest day of the year. We had an air conditioner in the room, and I had to edit out the sound of the air conditioning, and it was challenging. Let's say. I at the beginning of the video, I do say to them, we have a fourth player tonight. It's our air conditioning unit, but that's the thrum of the engines of the ship in the background. So I was trying, you know, you've got to try and play it off. But it was.
Just when you're talking about editing, I'll just go to another of Seagoat's questions, which is how much editing do you really have to do? A quick once through of what you have recorded, or hours of painstaking cutting of miscellaneous asides?
There was the video of 78 edits. That was the longest one I've ever had to do. Unfortunately, someone had a cough. And the real challenge is, if someone has a cough, that's fine. Yeah, and you know they've got like a tickly throat. What you have to get them to do is give you all a sign that they're going to cough their guts out for a few minutes, and everyone stop and have silence before and after. The challenge is, if someone does something over the top of people talking, you just can't take it out. You know, unless you've got a very good sound system or audio setup where you've got different feeds. But even then, if you're around the table, this microphone will pick up what this player is doing to some extent. So it's really hard to do. So most times, because we did our kind of chat at the beginning, most of the time it was okay, and we'd have a bit at the beginning, bit at the end. And then one or two things in the middle where someone needed to go to the toilet or that kind of thing, or someone said something and you're like, yeah, okay, we'll just cut that out of this one, or someone went on a little aside and you're like, that's probably too much of an aside. And often what would happen is myself or Sam, she'd often help me out with this. It'd make a little note, timestamp, on the laptop we could see the time, the recording time, and just take a little timestamp, and then that would help me afterwards to then edit it down. So I don't watch through the whole thing again, because I'm there in the room The real challenge for me is when I'm not part of a stream and we're going to put it on YouTube, and I say to guys, was there anything I need to cut out? And they're like, nah, I don't think so. And I'm like, there better not be. Because I'm not going to watch through the whole thing, to edit it. I'm going to watch it through later, but to get it up on YouTube, I want to get it up on YouTube. So sometimes it was as little as 20 minutes, just making sure you get the sound, the right dip in sound to cut it out. And one time it was 7 hours editing one video. So that was painful. Yeah. I changed the rules after that.
Did you ever get? Do you ever get people to redo things to like if something has happened, like somebody's tripped up like that and tripped over somebody?
Yeah, not like. I don't redo's probably the wrong word, but we may start. Oh right, okay, we'll start combat, and then someone spills something, and you go, okay, right, well we'll restart combat. Right.
But you wouldn't say like repeat that line because you spoke over somebody else, or
not like that. Only if there was like an accident in the room.
Right.
That meant we wanted to cut it out. Yeah. Not if someone else said something, I wouldn't say, shut up, do that again. Yeah. That to me, what we're trying to do...
Artificial.
Yeah, is trying to actually, and this is what I was saying earlier on, you've got to think about what you're trying to show to people. Are you going for early critical role or are you going for late critical role? That's kind of are you going for, it's entertainment, we're all in character, it's all quite... well stage managed, or are you going for we're around a table role playing like we do, and there's an audience for each. So the good news is there are people who watch both of them, and some people watch us and they say, oh, I love the fact that you guys, it's like I'm at the table with you, with Flint and Steel, and that's great because that's exactly what we were trying to do. Although I would love it to be a polished multi-million-pound entertainment franchise, obviously it's never going to be that. So I'm realistic, but I'm very proud of what we produce. So we've got a great team doing it. So it's a lot of fun, and I sometimes I stop and I think, why the hell am I doing this? And I'm like, because it's a lot of fun. And we've got a great community. All these people now on Gartopia, which is our Discord server. They're the home of Garblag Games. They come in, we chat about all the stuff. We've just added a cookery channel on our Discord now, because so many people come in and they're talking about what they're eating in associated with games and all that. So it's kind of branching into lots of different things. So, yeah.
I don't know what happened there. I was trying to bring up the Discord link on screen. We can put it in the chat too. There we go.
Yeah. But there's a bunch of our guys in the chat anyway, so they'll probably...
Excellent. Yeah, just pop it in the chat if you have it to hand. So we'll go back to Kilishandra's question, which is about how many players do you feel works best for an online game?
5. Because if someone's ill or can't do it, or if 2 people can't do it, you can still do it. And I find that 6 faces on a screen is good. It's probably as much as you want to go. When you start going beyond that, you're like, And also, when you've got fewer players, if you only have 2 players, sometimes those players, because you're streaming, can feel there's that added pressure on them to perform. So it's good to have like 4 or 5 people. It's very similar to being around a table, So it's like, what if people can't make it? Or what if 2 of us can't make it? We'll still go ahead. They're just going to be, I've been in and out of the streams because I've had some work going on in my house, got my new Garblag HQ here, and I haven't been able to make it. My characters have been weekend at Bernie's all over the games, and that's just, that happens, and people understand that. And what's great is our viewers, they get to know us a bit, so they kind of become a bit more understanding around that kind of thing. But 4 or 5 is great. 3 is good. When you start getting smaller, it's you got to work it in a different way. I'm really interested in actually doing a game with 4 players, but doing a solo one-on-one with each of them first about how their characters get to their meeting point, and then the viewers, and tell all the other 3 players not to watch them, and the viewers will have the knowledge, and each player will know why they're there. But they all won't until they kind of reveal it to each other. And I think that could be a really interesting way to do things, because people will be like, oh, they're going to, and that kind of thing. And, yeah, it's 4 or 5.
That's interesting. I'm intending on doing something that's almost the reverse of that for our stream, which is to take the existing group and then present that to all the people and say, this is our group, and then do a couple of short one-on-one sessions after you've got to know the characters. So, for example, we all know the Enemy Within campaign. I won't go into any details because I am going to be using that. But you arrive at Altdorf and a couple of the characters do a couple of asides. So doing that is some relatively short one-on-one sessions so you can get an idea of some of the secrets that those characters may be dabbling in without necessarily revealing that to the whole table at once. And I think that might be a fun aside. And it's sort of almost the reverse of what you were discussing there, which is starting with the one-on-ones and then moving into the group as a whole.
Well, funny you should mention that, because that kind of happened to us accidentally. So we did a Star Wars game, Fractured Empire, which was set a bit after Return of the Jedi and Empire's fallen apart and all this kind of stuff. And we had 4 players in that, and a really good first session, bit of combat, bit of this, bit of plot, bit of that. And then a couple of the guys couldn't come to the next session, and I was like, oh my God, we're just into the 2nd episode of this new series. What are we going to do? So we said, okay, we're going to do side stories. So we did 2 players in the next session. When we came to session 3, all of the players turned up, and I was like, okay, we'll just carry on and we'll say this has happened with those other players. But we had a tech meltdown, and I saw a question about tech meltdowns earlier on in
there's one
Discord.
in there.
And basically, you got to think about how many USB ports you got plugged into your computer when you're doing this. So we had three cameras. We had all the microphones and stuff, and a lot's going into the computer, so the processor couldn't handle it. And just on some days, it would just go, nope, I'm not turning on that camera. And it did that day. And 2 of the guys said, look, you did their story last week. We'll go home. That's fine. It's no skin off our nose. Do the side story. So if you go and watch Fractured Empire episode 3, I winged that whole episode. I had an idea in my head of what would have happened, but they were like, yeah, sure. And I was like, but I nearly quit the channel that night because that tech problem was just like, yeah.
Yeah, that's going to be a toughie.
Yeah, Sundance says that's a really great idea. Imagine all the crazy stuff Aaron P. Church characters got into in the past. That's like in our games, that's my characters. They're always going off and doing things, much to the annoyance of Andy Leask's characters.
100%.
Well, Aaron is terrifying, but in a very positive way. And he can tell you a good way to dispose of a body. For real. And when it comes up in a thing, it's like, okay, I'm going to go get this, and this. And everyone's like, oh my God, has he done that before? But
you sort of touched this on this when you're not in the same location. They take their headphones off. But what about when you are? So do you move around and whisper secrets to the players? Do you say it out loud for everyone to know, share with viewers, or do you text the players instead?
handwritten notes. Old school.
Nice.
Just a little... We've done that before. We did it in the Mothership Halloween one-shot. There was an alien creature AI thing, and one of the guys who was like a very Tony Stark kind of character who had a weird link up with this creature via his mobile phone, and he was texting it, like, and then trying to negotiate with it and and he was like, so we did that via little messages, and then we read them out like later on to say what that conversation had been in the background. So moving around and whispering is a bit more tricky when you're all in the studio and you've all got in and comfortable and microphones are all set up and lights are on and all that stuff. You often don't want to like break that, open doors, windows, move away, all that kind of stuff, because light balancing goes off and all that kind of thing. I mean, I sound like we had some kind of professional setup. It was my garage, but it was, it got to a really good level. So we were kind of keen to like, right, we're not going to move around, but we'll pass things, that kind of thing. Yeah, and people would headbutt microphones.
Yeah.
So let people know, because people aren't often used to having stuff right here above their head. So the number of times someone would go, okay, I'll just grab that dice for you, and you'd be like, right, write down a timestamp on that one, shall I?
I'm calling it. I'm going to be the first person to do that. 100%.
Sounds that way. Yeah.
But it's been interesting in our kind of early games that we're doing just now with the people that we're going to be streaming with later, like that we've been playing about with different ways of doing things. And one of the things, it felt weird to do it, but then we did it. It was fine. But there's a point where my character was speaking to a dwarf character, and in the past, like, but in Cazelid, so like in the past, we might have gone somewhere else to have that conversation. Instead, it was just in Cazelid. I'll say this, so all the other players know, but we're all mature enough to know that the characters don't know, and it actually worked fine. And you're like, 20 plus years of role playing, chuck it out the window. Actually, you don't need that. Just do it this way.
Also, you'll find with people watching, people cheat less. Not cheat, but that metagaming. Some metagaming's good, where you're like, that's the big bad guy, you guys need to go and fight him. Not quite that crude, but you know what I mean. Versus like, I overheard their conversation, so I'm going to use that information when I go and talk to the next. People are pretty good at that. And we have the take your headphones off kind of thing as well, occasionally to do that.
I suppose we could have the inverse. Andy, you could tell us to put our headphones on so we can't hear. Go into the quiet zone so we can't hear.
I think you'll still hear Andy if you've got headphones on, though.
Yeah, I was going to say, like, I'm not sure that's going to work.
We could get those industrial ear protectors, like we could.
No.
Non-anomaly says the secret motives and envelopes thing you've done before is really great. It's funny because our Andy has done that for us, so I was like, it's non-anomaly.
Many times.
I can't even say the name. Is that one of our players? Is that one of your players? Who knows?
Non-anomaly is one of our viewers, and on our Discord, we did with the Mothership game. There were 4 players and there were 4 character classes, and we put it out to our patrons. Join our Patreon. To say who wants to be who. For the patrons voted on it, and then I handed them a big envelope, and it had in there their character name, and they were named after one of the patrons. And it had their public information, and they had to read that out to anyone, and they could kind of embellish it if they wanted to. Then it had some secret information, private information, which they could share if they wanted to, but might make them look a bit suspect. And then they had secret information that, once reading it, they realised, if I say this out loud, I'm in trouble. And they all had a goal. And that was like, because it was a one-shot, and I love sci-fi horror. That's one of my... I've got my Space Beast t-shirt, Star Beast t-shirt on, and that was great, and it dropped them in it, and they had loads of information, and there's a great shot of all of them reading them and going, like, what have I got? Oh my god, this is what I've got to, and it was a great role-playing challenge for them, and they all knocked it out of the park. So it's it's fantastic.
Here's one from Rangdo of Arg. Do you have an ideal episode length?
That's a very good question. We tend to do sort of 2-hour sessions, generally. 9 till 11 in the evening is when we stream. I would like it to be 8 till 10, but there are a lot of parents in the cast, and just the unreliability of when children will go to sleep means that 9 p.m. is better for us to get going. Definitely on my shows, and 2 hours, therefore, is probably good. It's not the best length for YouTube algorithms. They like 10 minutes. That's the magic number. But I think it's good enough. You want to have a long enough episode that the players feel that they can get into it, not just the viewers. If you do like hour snippets, it can be hard for the player to get back into character, get their resync all their motivations and all that kind of stuff. So you want to give the player, they've got some time to get into it and to figure a few things out. But sometimes we run over,
A forfer lad, this is like a blast from my past. Latin, Eki Romani, and a forfer lad just dropped in to do my usual shill for Pete's level 832 campaign, which inspired me to buy all the Alien RPG stuff and GM it many times. How did he do it?
How did I... I love sci-fi horror. That's my favourite. So I was waiting for Alien to come out. Alien has been one of my favourite movie franchises for a long time. And, when that game was announced, I was like, okay, this is going to be my thing. and we did LV832. It was just a lot of fun. The players really got into it. We had a chat beforehand, and it was, the good thing was everyone realised that with Alien, you're thinking, I'm going to die. That's going to happen. So I'm going to lean into it, and I'm not going to be, it's not like the wary guy in Call of Cthulhu who's like, I'm not going near there, I'm not going to read any books because I might get... It's like, how would you know that? You're a labourer. How would you know that these books are going to drive you mad? So they really lent into it. They played it really well. And that was just I loved playing Alien, and I want to go back. I've done LV832, then I did, which I should have called Ready's Prospect, and I'm really annoyed that I didn't. Then I did Desolation's Edge, which was a UPP series, and I want to go back and do another one called Annihilation's Trail, which is going through a decimated city. Kind of three very different stories and different things, but all linked in my own the later films didn't happen verse of Alien. It's great. It was great fun. And we did a lot of the headphones off, people's secret stuff. So it was really good. It worked really well.
So Oxycators asked, do you play published adventures, and is there a worry about spoilers by doing so?
So we do a lot of published stuff. Personally, I don't. I've always been someone to, like, if you looked at that's not my whole role-playing collection, but if you looked at my whole role-playing collection, I don't have a lot of adventures or those kind of modules. I have all the core books and the extra core rules and those kinds of things, players guides, GM guides, all that kind of stuff, because I've always wanted to create my own story or create my own world and that kind of thing, and that's just me personally. So a little while ago we did a Enemy Within stream, which was sponsored by Cubicle 7, which was great. The problem with that was I had to do it all by the book, and that was a strange feeling for me as a games master. And there was less, and not that it proved a problem, because in the end that stream went really well, and the first video on that has hit 15,000 views. That's our top video ever. But just as my own internal feeling about running that game, and some of our viewers are in the chat watching right now and may think, oh God, I felt constrained. I felt a bit constrained by running that. I think, especially because it was sponsored. I would sponsor it. Sponsorship is amazing for the channel, so don't get me wrong, fantastic. All that stuff, we get giveaways for the stuff for the cast to make it happen, because we need to know all the rules and things, and then stuff for our viewers, giveaways, everything fantastic, and they were great to sponsor us. But just my own kind of internal sense of like, I can't move outside these two tram lines was like, oh, other published stuff we do isn't sponsored. We can play around with what we want to, so that's fine. And Millie has done the Marine campaign. Matt's doing the Starfinder. Look. Night. Yeah.
It's like being back in lockdown again.
Am I that guy on the news now? Yeah. Who's got his kids coming in the side?
So while you're saying goodnight, I'll chip in with an interesting point in this one. One of the core goals and design goals, shall we say, for Warhammer was that you made it your own. It was written right into the very introduction of the game, that the rulebook would have options, that there would be different ways of playing it. Every GM would probably almost certainly have their own version of Warhammer at the table. So it's a little bit unfortunate in many respects that the Enemy Within, which it's full of sides saying, here, as a grognard, you could play it this way or you could play it that way.
Yeah. So I could use the grognard sides. That was fine. But I completely understand their position, and I'm not saying this is a negative about them. They're like, right, we're sponsoring you to play this product, play that product. We don't want like you messing it up, and as someone being sponsored to run a published adventure, I want to do the best job of showing that thing off. So both sides, absolutely right. Just the old afterwards, having a drink, emotionally thinking about it, and you're like, I'm not sure. Yeah, how do I feel about doing that kind of stream? So just
interestingly, from the way we're going to be doing it, it's not going to be like the book. So I now having said, interesting you should put it that way, I now then go, well, when we do it, as a single example, right from the very get-go, the job of the campaign will be to reinforce its core themes, which means every single NPC will be re-examined. What's the point of it being there? What is it doing? And if there isn't any point, kick! Because there's an overall story to tell, and particularly given where the game is going at the very end, this is not a story that happens by chance. Which means that right from the very beginning, I'm looking at artifice. And that's something that I think will be quite fun, just from the perspective of presenting a different version of it.
Yeah, and I assume you'll want to kind of contract some of the starter stuff, because everyone out there has done the first book, streamed
in fact,
actual plays, and it's like getting to the fourth book or the fifth book. That's the real thing. That will be the big achievement.
And interestingly, the fourth and the fifth book, when we get there, my version's going to be so different that it's going to be ridiculous anyway. One of the great joys of doing it this way is I had massive conversations with Graham Davis through the entire course of producing it. And we came up with so much stuff. And then I resigned. So all that stuff never happened. So I've still got all of this stuff just sitting there waiting to go. And I think it'll be super fun for that to be integrated as and where it best fits. And I agree with you completely. Not spending time on the initial parts other than what it does for the overall story and ensuring the key beats are in place. But I agree with you completely. But that's slightly aside to the overall.
If I have to set up a trading company on a barge again, then I will sink my own fucking barge.
We've got
warning you.
Oh.
That sounds like a challenge.
Thanks, Graham.
We've got a current Enemy Within run going where Jim is running that, and it's the unofficial Enemy Within, which is kind of monthly, and that's very different. And Jim is an amazing Warhammer games master. His Once Upon a Time in the Old World, or Uatatau as we call it, is on season 3. It just started on Wednesday, and his NPCs are amazing, just so characterful and so Warhammer. He's got that sense of humour down pat. So it's just so he's doing it at the moment with the guys, and they're having a great time running through that. So that's cool.
So Andy had a question that he asked me to put in the banner. Andy asks, if you were starting again now, would you do anything differently? Sorry, I should have let you ask it, Andy.
That's fine.
That's a good question.
Thank you.
I'm not sure I could have, but I probably would have tried to have saved up a little bit more money before actually starting. And not much more, but just enough to get some of that initial equipment. And I would have, I should have converted my garage earlier, which actually wasn't that expensive. It was just being lazy. And a friend said, a friend said, "Oh, you can use my gaming room in my house." So we were in there for a while, and that was great. But we had to, we had wooden frames with towels stretched over them and nailed on for soundproofing and stuff like that. And it was really good. But the problem was I had to take my gear, I had to set it up, I had to pack it away, all that kind of stuff. I've always wanted a space that is just dedicated to it. So I don't have to fiddle with the settings, I don't have to re-plug things in, because you're even plugging things in a different sequence with some computers can be, the end of a session before it starts. So yeah.
Cool. It's interesting because we're going through that process just now. And the whole garage conversion into studio thing. Unlike your suggestion, it's turning out to be really not cheap. Really not cheap, to the point of me going, oh my God, how much are we spending on this? Oh my goodness. And also, because it's really not cheap, it's something that's going to be quite a time sink in terms of getting everything done in time. And we want to start on relatively soon, not several months down the line. So we're just decided the other night that we're going to convert one of our front rooms into a makeshift studio until we get the full studio set up over into the garage. But holy moly, it does that begin to add up. Yeah.
I think I gathered all the equipment slowly over a period of time, when I then converted my garage. So it was just kind of like all the paneling and stuff like that, and then tables set up. But then I had all the gear kind of come in, and then, it's there was a lot of birthdays and things and Christmases where I said, oh, if you're going to get me anything, just get me this microphone. And people are like, what the hell am I getting you a microphone? It's like, you can watch me on Twitch, on YouTube. What the hell's Warhammer? It's like, I'm like,
you'll find out.
I'm weird. Just get me that.
I'm not sure whether a Forfer lad has asked the question. Would you consider any YouTube tutorial content about how to build a garage and then convert it into a streaming studio? Would you consider making that YouTube tutorial content, or Forfer lad, do you know of this content that we can go and absorb really quickly?
Because that would be awesome. I mean, from our side, we'll probably discuss everything we're doing as we go along, because we're about to set up our Patreon, get that all in place. Once we've done that, it's going to turn into, this week we're trying to do this, and let's see if that works. And that's going to be all down to the conversion of the garage, which we'll take everybody step by step through as we go, because why not? It's going to be done. We can chat about it and all the great many failures we're almost certain to confront as we try to make the whole thing work. And equally the same for when we try and convert the living room over the next door room. How on earth we're going to do that, I have no idea. But we're going to give it a go.
Yeah. I think for me it was the large flat spaces was the big challenge. So I panelled everything, and then a friend had large curtains left over from some work, and we hung those against the walls for sound dampening, lights and things, bought off Amazon and that kind of stuff. But then eventually we were like, no, we need to do something a bit more. So we did get this stuff. You can get acoustic panels, but they're quite expensive. But then we got this stuff.
Yeah.
And that is actually, it's pretty cheap, and it's actually pretty good. So it was that made a real difference to us, and that went round behind all the players, and then a bit on the ceiling, and we put a carpet down. So the floor and the ceiling you have to think about as well.
Lots to think about.
Good to know, and lots to think about.
Good to know. Well, we are coming to the end of our hour. That has actually been amazing. So many good questions and so much information. You brought props. You brought different kind of mics to illustrate your points. Just awesome. I'm blown away.
You're welcome. I have thought about actually doing some videos about streaming, but it's just finding the time between running, all the stuff. So
we'll just have to get you back on again.
Sure, more than happy.
Makes sense.
Brilliant. So next week, Andy Law, we have got Rook Week next week. So there's
we're all getting together. So Mark will be joining us, and Graham will be joining us. Graham Davis and Mark Gibbons, and we're going to be discussing dark fantasy RPGs and why they're so frickin' awesome.
Yeah. What are their enduring appeal?
Yeah, indeed. Why do we keep on coming back to them? And in our case, why do we keep on making them? Whether it's our Warhammer backgrounds or moving on to the stuff that we're making just now. So yeah, that's going to be an awful lot of fun. And yeah, absolutely agree with Aaron there. Thanks, Pete.
Brilliant. And then the week after that, we have who do we have? Johan Egerkrantz. No, that's not right, is it?
No. It's Bob Naismith the week after that. Which any fan of Warhammer Space Marines will know very well, since he pretty much designed them. And I'm really looking forward to that one, just because who doesn't like a Space Marine?
I certainly am wearing Dark Angel Green right now because I love them so much.
Oh no, does that make me an ultramarine? I'm not okay with that.
Appears to be the case.
I'm going to claim Space Wolf.
Secret One.
Yeah.
I'm a bit dark.
Well, thank you again, Pete. It's been really great to meet you and have you on the show. And we will see. Thanks to all your viewers for coming along to support you and ask some really good questions.
Thanks, guys, for coming. And
Thanks
for
everyone. It's been absolutely awesome. And do join us over in Discord as well.
Yeah. See you all next week.